Hey, let's start the show.
For Thursday, May 27th, 2021. Welcome to This Is Only a Test, the official podcast of Tested.com. Welcome. Hello to the podcast this week. I believe we are on schedule. Not only on schedule, we got a full complement of crew. The original crew is here. Original as of the last, 4 or 5 years. Jeremy Williams.
Who's counting? What's up, guys? How are you? Good to see you.
I like your Escape t-shirt. Is that a cry for help? Or is this a plea for the Escape key to come back to Apple keyboards?
No, I got this during COVID and it just seemed appropriate.
So plea for help. Absolutely.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, get me out of here.
Yeah. Okay. Very nice. Kishore, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I had my first eye exam in a long time and I can't see anything right now.
Eye exams. I gotta have.
I love those though. I love those because it means new glasses, which always feel like a superpower, like a bio upgrade. I can't wait for my 1-year appointment, which is coming up in July.
You get your eyes checked annually, like a normal, like responsible person.
Well, actually, like I Kishore, and maybe you could tell me more about this. According to the internets, America, it has somewhat of a situation with eye, prescriptions, in that there's a whole industry of insurance and eye prescription providers and glasses providers that are all working together to make money.
Yes, yes. They're all owned by like two conglomerates, right? All the lenses, everyone's made by that, and yet they refuse to fulfill a prescription unless it is recent. Although I think you can like say, "Are you sure?" Like you can like push through. I think legally you can ask them to actually make something.
Oh, really?
I believe. Yeah. I mean, I will confess here at Podcast Confessionals, I have not had my eyes checked for 5 years.
Wow.
It's bad.
That's why he calls us by our wrong names. That's why he thinks I'm Kishore and you're Jeremy. So.
Oh, that's crazy. I love the things. Because first of all, you get to play the little video game where you look at the dot and you tell them if you see the dot or not.
Wow.
And I'm really good at it.
Okay.
And then you leave and you get a new prescription. You order it from Warby Parker. It comes in a week. And then your eyesight is better. It's amazing. I love the whole process.
Well, not only is it a new prescription.
I know you're into retro games, Jeremy, but the game at the optometrist, that's too far. That's too far.
Do you check the high score at the end?
It's like BYO sound effects.
Right. Oh, boop. That's red.
Exactly.
Yeah, new quarter, try again. It's not only the few times, because I'm terrible at it, I've gotten new glasses with the new prescription. Yes, you're right. It's a superpower because my eyes are absolutely worse than they were 5 years ago. But also, with the polycarb lenses these days, like after 6 months, they're the micro scratches. Like they are very, very scratched up. It's not just the smudges. So new lenses themselves. But I think like my frames aren't even offered by Warby Parker anymore. So I'm resistant to the change. Will they take these frames back and put new prescription in them?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Right? They're disposable. So unfortunate. Right to repair. Recycle, upcycle my glasses. Whoa, something just fell off in the back over there. Well, okay, video still working. We're moving on. All right, well, we are back to our we're resuming our new format where we're going to talk about our big topics of the week. But we want to get first to some quick news catch up. We don't have a musical cue for this, so I'll just assume interstitial played at some point, and let's talk about some movie casting news or movie news in general. So Netflix has been developing a live-action adaptation of Sandman, the long-running series from Neil Gaiman. Of course, fans of Sandman got to enjoy the audiobook version of that, which had an amazing voice cast. You had Professor X himself as Morpheus, not Patrick Stewart, James McAvoy, I believe. Wasn't who else was cast in that? Kishore, do you remember? It was a good voice cast. It was one of the better Like, do you guys remember? Do you guys ever listen to the American Gods audiobook?
No,
It was more. Oh, geez,
everything looks good here.
everything was good here. Something went up. Something went wrong. Can you hear me?
Yep.
That was weird. Did I just have a power surge? My laptop just went completely blank for a minute, and then came back. Okay, all right, we're gonna roll with it. As long
Get
as it's
those
still
new
rolling.
glasses, Norm.
Yeah. Yeah. If you had never listened to the American Gods audiobook, it's on Audible. It's more like a teleplay. There's a lot of like there are different voices for every character. So unlike some of the audiobooks where it's one voice actor doing everything, they actually have voice performers, and that's what they did with Sandman as well. Not different voice actors, a lot of descriptive. It's almost like listening to a radio play. That's what it is, a radio play. But that's different than the live action Netflix adaptation, which has been in long development for a long time. And not only do we know that it's going to be Gwendolyn Christie is in it from Game of Thrones. They've now cast Death, and they've also cast Joanna Constantine, and Delirium, and Dream, and Desire, the Endless, essentially. But I think Death was a highly anticipated casting. It's big character, and it is Kirby Howell Baptiste from The Good Place. She played Simone in The Good
Oh, wow.
Place. Yeah, I think it's
She is
inspired
great.
casting. There's something about the character of Death that has to have a dark presence, but on the surface, very jovial, and it's almost like you want to be her best friend, and or she is like your best friend. I think that Kirby Howell Baptiste, who played Chidi's girlfriend in the later seasons of The Good Place, has that quality. And so I'm really excited about this casting. Tom Sturridge, the British name. He's playing Dream the Endless. So that was the big announcement a while ago. So this is still in
I'm
development. It's going to be long series.
I'm excited about Jenna Coleman as Joanna Constantine. Jenna Coleman, one of the Doctor companions, probably her most famous role. But she showed some range in some other shows recently, including Serpent, if anyone's watching that, which is excellent. And then Stephen Fry. Stephen Fry is the greatest. He's playing Gilbert. Patton Oswalt's coming in as Matthew the Raven. Like,
The
these are
Raven.
not like, massive characters in the universe, but they're big enough. Like, I love Patton Oswalt. Even David Thewlis is coming in as John Dee. So, like, there's a ton of great British actors, and Patton Oswalt is there also. That's how I read this casting.
Yeah, good on Netflix for being bold with this casting, and I hope they put a lot of money behind it, because this could be a very, very long running series. And like the comic Invincible, in which the Amazon animated series really got a whole new fan base and audience for that show, and I'm sure helped the sales of the graphic novels. Hopefully, Sandman's already had a massive fan base, but hopefully this will expose that universe and that comic book series to a more mainstream audience and get people reading comic books.
Is Sandman still running?
No, they Neil Gaiman completely finished decades ago, and then they came back with, I believe, Requiem was the name of the miniseries, and that was Neil Gaiman with amazing artists who did the Batwoman covers, but really fantastical. And that one was not necessarily a sequel, but a kind of a telling of what filling in some of the blanks in that. Yeah. If you don't know the premise of Sandman, I mean, you probably, if you're listening to this podcast, you might have some familiarity with it, but it's Neil Gaiman had the idea of taking the DC character. There was a superhero named Sandman who was a guy who wore gas masks, and he could invade dreams, but he was allowed to run with, just take the name Sandman and run with it, and created this whole mythology of the idea of a character named Dream of the Endless, who, along with his siblings, they kind of are these eternal beings, endless desire, delirium, destruction. There's 7, I believe, of them. Death, of course, and he is trapped on Earth, and the whole story is about what happens when he becomes untrapped, and as someone who's immortal being. Rediscovers humanity and all the stories. Shakespeare is in there. It's a lot about the relationship between us as humans have with our dreams. Very relatable stuff, as well as fantastical as well. Um, Also exciting for those of you who listen to our podcast, Portal, Valve's Portal. We're gonna have some Valve discussion this week. Valve's Portal still being developed as a movie, says J.J. Abrams, kind of collector of interesting IP for movies and yet unrealized. I mean, that's what he does. Bad Robot just buys up interesting properties, things that like fill the mystery box, and they never end up making movies out of this. But I guess it's still
Well,
happening at some point.
it's like 7 years ago, I think they first hinted at this. He and Gabe were on stage, and JJ said that it was as real as anything ever gets in Hollywood.
Which is to say, they could spend millions on development. They could have a writer, they could have a cast, and it could still not happen
Yeah.
because movies are miracles. And
Do you want to see this? Like, I remember that announcement years ago and being like, oh, that sounds great. And now, 7 years later, reflecting on it, especially with what J.J. Abrams has produced in the meantime, I'm in a no thanks category.
I don't know. It's weird, right? Because Portal is such a great game series. It's so good, but it's so good because of the mechanics. And like that doesn't necessarily translate into a great movie. There's enough there to as a seed for an idea for a movie, but it's not like Half-Life where you could really start to imagine a world building.
I think you have a lot of video game movies that are option that have this blend of not only being iconic because they had great gameplay, but because they're memorable stories. So you have Borderlands, right? Which I think a lot of people love primarily because of the story and the characters and the voice acting. Well, it's fun gameplay, fun co-op play, but kind of unremarkable aside from the looting and the variations in the weapons and that you can accumulate. And yet that's Eli Roth is turning that into a movie on the strength of the characters. You have Assassin's Creed where they're like, okay, you got to have the the gameplay elements, and this is a fear I have with like the Uncharted film. Like Uncharted film is such a cinematic game, but the things that make it memorable from a video game perspective don't necessarily have to be something to put on screen. Remember that when Doom, that movie came out with, with Carl Urban and The Rock, and the conceit of that was that they had a sequence that was played out in first person, smoothed out, and we were all so excited as video gamers, as PC gamers. We were like, "Oh, this is like the video game." Like, and you watch that now, it's like that was tacky, and it was. It's unnecessary. It was pandering to an audience. Just they could have told a good story, and that's why I think the Portal game or the Portal, if they turn it into a movie, the conceit of portals themselves. I mean, we've seen portals like in Doctor Strange already, right? It just exists in the fabric of that world. You don't need it to be a key part of the visual storytelling or even the actual story. It's more about GLaDOS and Aperture Laboratories and the mystery, and of course, being J.J. Abrams. What is the mystery of what is Chell doing, awaking in this series of experiments?
You don't want to see somebody struggle with portals for about 2 hours before it finally clicking, and then all of a sudden, the box gets where it needs to be.
I mean, yeah, it's gonna be some like who's gonna voice the companion Q? Like they're gonna will they bring back some of the voice actors? Stephen Merchant, who did some of the voices in Portal 2, will be the robot buddies. Like, I'm okay with it. I think the best thing that came out of Portal being imagined as a live action thing was Dan Trachtenberg's short film. You guys remember that? That's the thing that got him the directorial gig. So he directed 10 Cloverfield Lane. After that, he was attached to the Uncharted film, but he got his big start by making that Portal short film. And if you need what Portal looks like in live action on screen, just watch that short film and you'll be all right, is what I think. Moving on, Tesla, ever controversial Tesla with bold claims of full autopilot.
This year.
It's been this year for a while right now, right?
Yeah,
as real as anything has ever been in the in the EV business. Well, they've started shifting the technologies of the Model 3 and Y into betting even more into computer vision. So the background on this is there's kind of two big schools of thought for Autopilot. There's Can you do autopilot like the Waymo and Cruise cars, like Kishore and I were talking about last week, where it's lots of LiDAR using time of flight sensors to map the world constantly? Or can computer vision and neural networks and deep learning be enough to as a sensor platform to map the world? And Tesla is heavily betting on computer vision to a point where they're getting rid of the radar sensors. There's little circles you see on the bumpers of cars that tell you how far you are away from bumping another car and do that emergency stop. No longer on the Model 3 and why. What do you guys think about this? Jeremy?
First of all, I just realized that I've been clearing my throat and muting Zoom, and Zencaster probably doesn't care about that. So, so I apologize if everybody hears me clearing my throat. I think obviously he's right. I just don't know if he's too ahead of his time or not. Like we are great sensors of whether or not we're going to collide with another car. We only have 2 optical sensors, and our eyeballs and our ears, and that's it. And we do a great job, far better than any other computer can do with 10 times as many sensors and radar today. I mean, obviously there's outlier circumstances where, like the car, there's a famous video of the Tesla seeing the car brake 2 cars in front of itself, and a person couldn't even see that.
The ultrasonic sensor. Yep.
Exactly. Yeah. But generally speaking, yeah, I think we're going to get there optically, without question. And having a ton of sensors on there once we get past this like inflection point is going to be incredible, and it's going to be better than humans. But I just don't know if we're anywhere near there yet. I see Waymo. You mentioned Waymo. They look like NASA cars, and they're all over San Francisco right now.
Yep.
And every day, like they're testing the city, they're mapping the city, because I see them drive around my house all day long, every day. And every time they come down my block, it stops because it doesn't know what to do with itself. And this is a supercar. Like, this is way beyond what Tesla's doing. So yeah, I don't think we'll get there this year, and who knows if we'll get there even next year. But I do think optical only is the right way forward. It makes sense.
We talk about 2 different things there when comparing it to the human, our ability to respond to the world just using 2 eyes, right? Stereo vision. Because one, we're not just using stereo vision. When we drive, it is sensor fusion. We're using audio, auditory sensing. There's haptic sensing, the feel of the road, all of this stuff. And our experience, like, our 2 eyes, yes, they might just be 2 cameras. They are technologically, they are, if you want to compare like the specs of our eyes versus the specs of cameras, it is generations, it's light years ahead of what camera sensors can do today, just purely because of the optics and the actual sensors. We're talking about not just the number of pixels, because the cones and physiologically, sure, please jump in. But like, the rods and cones of our eyes are incredibly dense. When we pinpoint them and lock onto them, there's a difference in the density of the black and white we see in contrast and edge detection versus color. The dynamic range, our ability to adjust our aperture and resolve, details. A lot of what you see in like the reports of autopilot accidents are in glare, in direct sunlight, where the camera sensor. So there's a fundamental like gulf in sensor and lens capability between what we have in cars and cameras and what we have in our eyes. And then, but I feel like Tesla isn't banking on those sensors catching up to biologically our eyes anytime soon. They're counting on deep learning, just pure amounts of data. And you can have incomplete data. You can have an imperfect visual sensing of the world, but based on just learning and the models that they've generated, it's good enough to anticipate what's going on the road and predict what's going on the road. That's
we
what I
should
think
do
they're
a
banking
deep
on.
we should do a deep dive on this, because it gets really complicated really fast, in the sense that LiDAR is going to have a wider field of view, and it's more advanced optically, as Norm said, than any sort of computer vision component right now. But LiDAR has its own challenges too, in the sense of there's not economies of scale backing the LiDAR technology. So it's way more expensive than computer vision technology. The supply chain for cameras is done. Like, we don't need to reinvent that. And then there's some indication, like Simon Verghese from Google, who heads Google's LiDAR group at Waymo, published a paper. I think it was a year ago, might have been 2 years ago, and there was some indications from that paper and some follow-up work that lidar deteriorates as like dust and other stuff accumulates on the sensor. So you like there has to be some like cleaning and validation of that work. So it gets really deep into the technology, and that's why I think we should do like a deep dive, because there's all sorts of things down to like the microchip level here that we should evaluate, that is going to be that's
Hmm.
going to indicate whether this is going to work or not. I think the market bet for Tesla is that the supply chain for cameras is done. LiDAR's not proven out. That has to be proven out. I'm an established car maker at this point. Why am I betting on a future technology that doesn't have an established supply chain, and just wasting, in a sense, wasting money in my car by putting sensors that may or may not be useful?
Right. Right. The problem is that they're all promising something. The race for this is so it's so competitive, and Tesla has made such bold claims. I mean, they've been charging for it for so long and upgrading the processing for it. It feels like there's urgency from an investor side for them to deliver and be first to market for this. But this is something that regulators are absolutely so wary about, and it's the reason we see so many of those Waymo and Cruise cars, because you can't get it wrong. And the problem with a machine learning model is, unfortunately, like, they're going to get it wrong sometimes initially. It's going to be imperfect until there's enough data. And just having a small fleet of test cars drive around San Francisco is not the type of scale they need for data. They actually need to have these on Model 3 and Ys in their, all the cars they've sold, to be collecting data in mass for it to actually be useful in prediction and as a predictive model. We'll dive into it later. We'll do more research, but absolutely an interesting thing that this is happening for the Model 3 and Ys, not for the Model X and S's, because there are fewer of those on the road. So those will still have the radar sensors. Hey everyone, Norm here. Before we continue, I want to let you know that this week's episode of This Is Only a Test is made possible with support from Storyblocks. If you're a creator, you need to try a Storyblocks membership. Storyblocks helps bring all your stories to life without sacrificing your vision due to lack of time, budget, or extra resources. Tell the best version of your story with affordable subscription plans and tools that scale to meet your needs. Storyblocks' ever-growing library consists of 4K footage, After Effects and Premiere Pro templates, music, images, sound effects, and much more. And their unlimited all-access plan gives you access to unlimited downloads, and assets are royalty-free, so you can use your downloaded content for commercial and personal use. Now, Storyblocks' Restock initiative is here to change the landscape of stock media by partnering with creators in underrepresented communities to build collections that represent those communities in an authentic light. Storyblocks' first cohort of filmmakers features the layered experiences of BIPOC and the LGBTQI community. Storyblocks will also be launching Queer Spaces and Faces. This initiative will feature 6 new contributors from the LGBTQI community, each creating a collection of 50 video clips that feature their community authentically and relatably. Explore that library and subscribe today at storyblocks.com/onlyattest. Once again, that's storyblocks.com/onlyattest. Moving on to some VR. We're not quite a VR minute, but a couple quick VR hits. First of all, Star Wars Squadrons, PSVR compatible, is going to be for free on PS Plus next month in just but a week or so. So now's the time to get in, right?
Oh yeah, such a good game. I mean, I assume that it plays fine on PlayStation as well because it doesn't require the wands. It's a gamepad game, so but easy pickup, especially if you have a VR headset.
And
Easy
hopefully,
pickup, high learning curve though in the game. It's a
true.
tough game.
It's true.
well, and also there's cross-platform play, so it's, if anything, will help bolster the player base. And they've done big updates with new ships, so hopefully it's something that can continue on. I've an update. I've dismantled and shelved away the gaming cockpit. It just took too much space.
Yeah.
I've retained the butt kicker haptic feedback device for the chair here because I like the rumbles, but I need a new solution for my flight sticks. I'm thinking about some of those the clamp ones. You seen these? They're the ones that clamp to the side of desks. I have my
Yeah.
desk over there, and it's like what I really want in Batman v Superman. There's a near the end of the movie before Batman does that big fight scene inside the warehouse and rescues Superman's mom Martha. He flies the Batwing and he releases control of the Batwing to Alfred. If you recall, you can find the clip on YouTube. But Alfred takes control of the Batwing. Oh, I thought you never asked. It's Jeremy Irons, and he pulls off these joysticks. He slides them almost like a keyboard tray, and they slide out from under the desk and pop up. And that type of like hidden throttle and joystick control, like that's what I want for a neat setup at home.
Sounds like a build to me, Norm.
But I'm never Googling scene from Batman v Superman.
Batman v
Sorry.
Superman. Dawn of Justice.
That's not going to happen.
Sure. It's random tangent. Did either of you watch Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead on Netflix? It's a rated R film, so not for the family, but it's his big unfettered Zack Snyder back into the horror genre. You know, his Dawn of the Dead remake, the one that's set in the mall, I think that's a classic. I really enjoy that film. It's very much of the era of the zombie video games, like your Dead Risings. But this one, first of all, it's too long. It's 2.5 hours long. But from a technical perspective, here's something that's interesting to you. He filmed the whole movie using these vintage lenses that were aperture f.095. Extremely, extremely high, shallow depth of field, wide open. And
Bokeh the film? Is that what it's called? What is that?
And the thing is, Stanley Kubrick famously shot scenes in Barry Lyndon using a NASA lens, like one of like a handful made it, and that was 0.7 f.7, right? Because he wanted scenes that were just lit with candlelight, and meticulous as Stanley Kubrick was, he was able to block the scene and frame it as such so that people's eyes would still be in focus, and you had this kind of really dreamlike sequence in dark, and it was a necessity because he wanted a candlelit only scene. Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead, most of it is set in the daytime. It's daytime Las Vegas. There's no need. It's not like a dark film at all. So you have this wide aperture, open wide aperture lens. People are just like phasing in and out of focus the entire time in the movie. When you have two people in frame, like Dave Bautista and a co-star, like the rack focus, the focus puller of this film is the real hero, able to switch between the faces because everyone is just like drifting in and out. It is front bokeh, back bokeh. It is. I don't understand why he did this as a stylistic choice. It sounds like
I Exam the movie, where things are coming in and out of focus constantly. Yeah. This sounds horrible. Like, this is the argument against cinematographer mode or whatever it was called, because this is insanity. Like, oh, this is my vision for the film. Like, your vision for the film is to give me a headache.
And he was his own director of photography. Not only did he co-write it and direct it, he might as well have edited it because it needs a heavy edit. It's way too long. The other thing, tech related, is that this is a streaming film, of course, Netflix only. There are certain scenes of the film where it's digital cameras that they shot with. The camera sensor has dead pixels in it, and they didn't fix the dead pixels in the edit. So you're watching this film, and if you have an OLED screen, you see like 3 dead pixels, bright pixels, locked into the same part of the frame. Like they didn't do any crops or anything in the edit. So it's like scene from scene to scene, like this, like an entire sequence, multiple shots, same dead pixel. And people were freaking out. I was freaking out until I Googled it and looked, and it is purely, they just didn't fix this in the production.
It's the digital equivalent of film grain, man. Just let the medium be itself. Let it shine through. Let it be raw.
Oh my God.
Why don't you feel Zack Snyder's intent with that dead pixel? Feel like the existential dread he's trying to create with that blank space.
Yeah. We talked about last week the filmmakers going up to the ISS. That's one where if you film, because famously digital cameras on the ISS, the sensors themselves, going back to camera sensors, the pixels are subject to cosmic radiation, which kill dead pixels. So a Nikon or a Canon digital SLR up and living for years on the ISS over time will accumulate an array of dead pixels. And when Doug Liman and Tom Cruise go up, maybe build that into the authenticity of them. Hey, we filmed this on the space station. Notice the dead pixels on our camera to show how authentic. That I can see some motivation behind it. But Zack Snyder's careless editing. Okay. You gonna say something?
I was gonna say Population 1 is getting Team
There
Deathmatch.
you go. Back to VR. Away from our tangent. Yeah. Not only do we have season 2 of Population 1 with the Wild West add-on. It's been very fun, and also they've done some balancing, but also getting now Team Deathmatch. It's still not solo mode.
No, that's kind of. I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only one. I would like solo mode just so I can hop in there, not have to talk to anybody, and just have some fun for 20 minutes. But Team Deathmatch. That sounds fine. They haven't announced the player cap yet, so it might be the 24 players, which would be 12v12, if my math is correct. And that's great. I guess it's the first to 20. Is that
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Or 30. First to 30.
Are they going to scale the map down? I can't imagine it's the full square kilometer of space.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Where do you respawn?
Right.
Up at the thing? Who knows?
Right. It'll be interesting. I mean, I think there's enough of a player-based ideas that they can start segmenting out to what people want, as opposed to relying on one game mode to fill out the servers. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oculus also previously announced at their game showcase that Carve was a snowboarding game, and that's coming out on Quest this week.
Today, as in Thursday. Yeah, I'm excited for that. It's of all the games that they announced at that event, this one looked the most interesting to me. I'm really excited to try it out. It's a first-person snowboarding game. I mean, it seems like it could be a winner. I don't know how you jump. How do you get yourself up onto a platform or something like that? Maybe it's a button press. Maybe it's throwing your hands up. There's also grabs where you can grab the front of your board. I'm imagining that is maybe a body motion or a button press as well when you're in the air. I don't know. There's a lot of interesting mechanics. I'm curious. There's some valid attempts at skiing on in the independent VR development scene, and so this seems like the first sort of pro move into that space. I'm really curious to try it.
The kind of luge game was one of the first VR experiments, the motion of locomotion, right? The kind of constant motion downhill. It was proved early that it works. It works like that. And so, I'm curious what type of motion they'll allow. Snowboarding is so much your lower body, and yet there's no lower body tracking for this. It's just going to be head, but how do you balance? Like, what does that mean, right? Yeah, very, very curious. We can't talk about VR without also talking about Demio. And Jeremy, you're back on the podcast this week, and also this is after another successful run through Demio, another campaign that we did over the weekend. Any thoughts you want to share from that?
It remains a great game. It's just they have to fix their voice comms. It's like, what's going on? It took us an hour to get started because we tried to get Will in there. He was not on Oculus. Voice communication wasn't even working between us on Oculus in game. We had to then set up a voice party. Of course, couldn't invite Will. So we bailed after a half hour, and then we got Frank jumped in with us. Bill jumped in with us.
Common mistake.
It is for me. I've even called him Frank to his face. I'm so sorry, Bill. I know you're Bill. I know you're not Frank. I know you live in a completely different state. You're a good guy, and I like you, and I'm sorry. But we played with him all the way through. We won it, but we still had to set up a party. We could not get the in-game voice stuff working, and that's a pain in the butt. I really hope they solve that problem because it's definitely more than a little friction.
Yeah.
It took us an hour to get started.
Yeah, 100% to what you said. I will say replay is great because of the dynamically generated levels, though. I didn't feel like we just played it quite the same. I'd say the final boss has a lot of the same strategies, but I felt like it was, almost a new game again, going through the second time. I think we're going to try to play again this weekend.
Heck yeah.
I wish there was a way to force that. It's not easy, but I feel like after a couple of gameplays, like Bill, who was a little more experienced than us, knew some of the tips and tricks and things that we were discovering on our, second and third playthroughs. But I wish there was a way that ramp up difficulty or have it scale to really ask for it to be really tough to make it extra rewarding. Because I feel like there is a way to make the last boss easy with some combination of luck and some preparation. The 2 times we beat the boss, we didn't feel like it was that difficult. Yeah. But very fun.
As I recall, there was a baby crying this last time, 10 minutes before we beat the boss, and you were saying, "Let's wrap it up, guys. Let's wrap it up."
And we did.
So I wouldn't, yeah, I wouldn't go asking for a harder boss after that experience.
Oh, the baby will take care of itself eventually. Eventually. And I'm finding time to do some projects now that, of course, Avery is on daycare. It's how I can do this podcast every week. And I'm doing some more projects. I did a live stream over this week that you guys might be interested in. I started putting together the Eagle Moss Next Generation Enterprise model kit buildup. So, Jeremy, I don't know if you are aware of this, but Enterprise
No.
D, of course, one of the Galaxy class ship, one of my favorite ships.
From Next Generation.
From Next Generation, 1701D. No bloody A, no bloody B. That's Scotty and Relics. This is a model kit that will, by the end of it, be a 27-inch model of the Enterprise D. Now, you might ask, how big? How big is that model ship? They give you a poster,
inches.
Yes, but how, like, there's an intellectual understanding of 27 inches, and there's a tangible physical understanding of what that model ship is. And if you're watching the video, here's a poster. That's how big the ship's going to be.
That's scale. Yeah,
that's 1-to-1 poster scale.
That's sizable.
That would be great. What are you complaining about? That sounds awesome.
That sounds awesome. I'm not complaining at all. I'm trying to share my excitement.
You just got rid of your cockpit because you have no room. Where is that going to live, Norman? On the ceiling?
On the ceiling.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Yeah. There's always more space on the Z-axis.
How many issues does it come in? Like, how many months?
It's 120 issues. I believe it's every 2 weeks. I think they send it. So it's going to be, basically 2 years of components. And yeah, it's pricey. A lot of people in the comments are like, wow, this, if you want to buy a model, you can get one for much cheaper. I think my take on it is that part of it is the building experience. Like, if you want to buy a completed model of something with lights, great. You can commission it. You can pay someone to build it for you, and you can get something that's, $1,000 or whatever. But I think with every model kit, whether it's Gundam or Lego, even, you are paying for the building experience and getting familiarity with the model. And here also all the extra media that comes along with it, the behind the scenes stuff that they have access to with the design of the ship. So I'm very excited, and I'll be doing those live streams maybe every week, maybe every other week, as the kit parts come in, so you can follow along. Those will be on Saturday nights. Should I talk about one more project? There's a video that will be on the site later today of another diorama project. It's a laser cutting project. And Jeremy, you're familiar with this, but I had not been familiar with the Inventables two-tone extruded acrylic, or laser cutting extruded acrylic at all. You want to describe what your experience has been with this?
It's a really novel material. Normally, when you laser cut something, you cut it out or you can etch into it. But when you etch into it, it's really just the same color as what you've etched around. So it can be a different texture. If you etch into wood, it can have a burned look to it, which makes it darker, which is like the best use for it. But what they did with acrylic is they basically take several different colors of acrylic, and then they paint another color on top. So when you etch through that, it shows the color beneath. Which really, it gives you a 2-color laser cut, or etch, which is really cool. Like Norm right there has a red on white. So he etched away the red and revealed the white beneath it. So it's a really cool, way to get 2 colors from your laser cuts or laser etches.
And it's made for milling and laser cutting, because I think they have like thicker versions. But the whole idea is it requires a little bit of fine tuning, because you have to understand how much to etch away. If you have your etch power too low, or your speed too fast, then you're not going to etch enough away. You're going to get some of that surface, or because it's extruded acrylic, it's a little more sensitive to heat than cast acrylic. So you have like the edge detail. By cutting through it, it's better to do multiple passes than to go full blast on the laser cutter, because the sides will curl up a little bit. So it's, I think, all part of the fun of kind of experimenting with materials. And the finish, I think, is so interesting, so much better than just like masking something and painting it, because it actually has dimensionality. You're removing a top layer, and so you can feel feel the edge difference on the engrave, as well as feel almost this kind of this chalky texture, a grainy texture on the white underneath, depending on the DPI setting of the laser. And it works really well with the Glowforge. They don't sell it on the Glowforge store; it's sold by Inventables, and they have, I got the white, color on white, but they have, white on black. They have, mirror finishes, also fake aluminum finishes, all sorts of stuff, and really worth checking out if you have a laser cutter.
It can require some cleanup. I would just point out, like, it more so than standard, laser cutting, because especially if you get really high contrast colors. Like I did a white on black, and when I etched away the white, the black that's underneath kind of spread around, and it got blown out over the white that was
Yeah.
on top. So just have to go over it with some rubbing alcohol and clean it up. It's just not terrible. If you're just doing some one-offs, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, some laser cutters will allow you in the cutting software to choose what, like if you're doing an engrave, what direction to engrave from top to bottom or bottom to up. Glowforge just kind of automates that when you import an image, a raster, and here you absolutely want, based on like how the machine blows and does the exhaust, you want it to be
Right.
engraving toward the exhaust, not away from the exhaust, so that powder that's etched away doesn't then fill into the blanks. And so a lot of like that kind of nuance. Again, I consider that all part of the fun of the process. The material isn't super cheap. It's like $13 for 1/8" 8x16 sheet, or 8x12 sheet, I want to say. But it's well worth it if you get some good results. This week's episode of This Is Only a Test is also made possible with support from HelloFresh. With HelloFresh, you get fresh, pre-measured ingredients and mouth-watering seasonal recipes delivered right to your door. You can skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. HelloFresh offers 25 recipes to choose from each week, from vegetarian meals to craft burgers and extra special gourmet options. There's something for everyone to enjoy, with all recipes designed and tested by professional chefs and nutritional experts to ensure deliciousness and simplicity. You can try meals ready in 20 minutes or less, lightning prep recipes, and quick breakfasts and lunches, perfect for your busy schedule. HelloFresh is 28% cheaper than shopping at your local grocery store and 72% cheaper than a restaurant meal without sacrificing the quality. HelloFresh has even been named Newsweek's most trusted meal kit company of 2021, with over 4 million households served. We tried cooking a couple meals from HelloFresh this past month, including some delicious Gouda burgers and also some mashed potatoes and mushroom chicken, and they were so good. Everyone at home, the kid and my wife, they were totally satisfied, and it gave us permission to experiment with new ingredients and, honestly, types of food that we normally wouldn't be cooking at home. Go to HelloFresh.com/12test. That's 12test, and use the code 12test for 12 free meals, including free shipping. That's pretty incredible. Go to HelloFresh.com/12test. That's 12test, and use that code 12test for 12 free meals, including free shipping. Now back to the show. Presses were stopped earlier this week with the rumor and not really confirmation, but an exclusive story from Ars Technica that Valve is working on a game console, a handheld game console, a competitor to the Nintendo Switch, a Switch-like device, portable gaming machine called the Steam Pal. Is this exciting? Does it make sense?
You know what? When I first heard this, I was thinking, okay, I'm not excited about this because I'm a curmudgeon and I've seen people do this before. NVIDIA tried to do it with the Shield.
That's right. The flip up. Yeah, that was great.
And like, it was like you could sort of see what they were doing, but why not just get a Switch? Why not just get a Game Boy Advance or 3DS or whatever it was at the time? But I gotta tell you, like, I think that might be the time for this, because portable PCs are powerful now. I recommend Googling a device called the Aya. I just checked this out. The Aya Neo. There's an Indiegogo for it. There's a YouTuber that I subscribe to named ETA Prime who did a review of it a few months ago, and it is it's basically what this product is. You know, it's a portable PC that looks like a Switch. It's a 720p screen with a Ryzen was it 45 Ryzen 5 4500U processor. It's got 16 gigs of RAM, an M2 drive on it, and it runs Windows 10. Like and it
Oh, wow.
runs everything great. Like it runs Crysis.
So this is not ARM. This is like straight up like a NUC with using x86 SoC.
It's and if you get like a terabyte M2, the thing costs $1,000. Like it is a PC. And this is potentially what Valve could be working on. You know, a real PC that runs, you know, the latest games at 60 frames a second in the palm of your hand. And as long as you're happy playing PC games with a gamepad, like that's the big concession, then why not? Like this is going to look eons better than the Switch in terms of like resolution and graphical fidelity.
My surprise here is that it sounds like, if this rumor is true, that they are going for full PC route, because the NVIDIA the Shield was such a platform for streaming, and Valve has embraced streaming. You can play Steam games on all platforms, from iOS to your laptops to and Android devices and Steam machines. That was the whole idea as well. Steam machines were dumb boxes for in-home streaming of things off of your gaming PC. I'm sure this could do that as well, and all of the Valve big screen stuff, the UI, and all the controller profile stuff. That's kind of like their secret sauce. You know, that's the Tesla charger network of Steam right now, and their competitive advantage over Windows and Epic is all those profiles and the user base that have built these profiles that make gamepads super playable for PC games. If it's that expensive, Valve is not in the hardware business. You know, Valve Index was something to push other headsets forward, right? To push other makers forward. And I don't know if it's been a success in that way, because we haven't seen Steam VR headsets really take the lead that Index has, aside from Valve Pro 2. Vive Pro 2, I feel like, is the only one. Even HP Reaver, that's Windows mixed reality. So is this like Steam machines, where they want to make a flagship product, build the software for it as they're good for, and then hope that Aya or other OEMs then take the lead and make their versions?
Well, I think the magic sauce is going to be making Steam like the front end. Like that's what makes it the Switch equivalent. You know, just making it user friendly. That it is this Aya product. It is a touchscreen. It is Windows. But to me, that sounds like the friction part of the experience. Like if they can boot straight into Steam, use their big screen mode to make it a native UI, purchase games, play everything, and just make it a gaming device, that's really compelling. Plus, you get your whole Steam library on your PC or on the go.
Well, you wouldn't have
that's
your whole
what
Steam
I was
library,
going to say.
because then you need a Windows license. Like if Steam is the front end, you're talking about the Linux version and it being booted to Steam, bypassing Windows completely. You're still talking about a Windows license where you're launching a startup command to launch into Steam.
I mean, Windows has that functionality. You can launch other apps, and they call it kiosk mode. You know, you can go straight into another app and have Windows sort of never show its face.
But the Ars report said that this would be a Linux device. It wouldn't be.
Did
like,
it? I missed that.
Yeah, I think that's the indication. I mean, obviously, it's Valve. Everything's a secret, so like no one knows. But if it's a Linux device that can boot a Steam client, you get your library. This is like really interesting. The problem is what Norm said. Like the price of this device is going to be astronomical unless they subsidize it, because there's no other a device like this on the market. Even Alienware talked about making a device like this last year at CES. Still hasn't come out. Like I think the supply chain to build this thing is non-trivial. So if they're going to make it bigger than a Switch and more powerful than a Switch, like on a PC level, this thing could cost like $1,000 to them. And so like, how much are they going to sell it for? Like $800-900?
They're
That's
not
a
going to
lot of money
subsidize
for
it.
an entry.
Not in the same way that Facebook and Oculus can, or is willing to. The Valve's MO in terms of subsidizing it is really giving it to the hands of developers and
Mhm.
kickstarting that part of the chicken egg equation and getting content on these platforms. And it's one of the reasons why, and Linux being their chosen platform, because Gabe Newell and Microsoft kind of have a tenuous relationship, right? That's It's one of the reasons Steam machines failed, because it was all Linux based. But streaming is a whole different world now, and everyone has embraced it. It's become a whole pillar of game consoles and game console platforms. Microsoft,
I don't know if it's that successful.
I think they've completely acknowledged that streaming is a thing that will be going forward. Microsoft, their Duo foldable Android device, that completely failed, but now they're half off, and Microsoft has now allowed them to turn into game consoles and stream games also from the cloud. Um, we've seen VR streaming become something that's worked, and so I think that kind of the holding to latency and image quality and compression as these things, that barriers to streaming, I think those are going away. Those roadblocks are going away. And I think the bigger issue is whether you can get interested native apps with the Linux platform here.
Right.
This
Yeah. I
seems
mean, I
like
suppose.
a weird moment to launch this, though, with all the chip shortages and them not being in control of their process. I'm really kind of shocked that this announcement would come at this point.
Well, it's not an announcement. They haven't announced anything. There's no commitment. This is
It's
a leak. It's a rumor. It's speculation. I'm sure Valve has done a ton of hardware prototyping and development on things that have never come to light. But they've been bold enough to put more things out there that then they've sunsetted and failed, and let fail, like the Steam machines, like the Steam controller, which is I still love the Steam controller as an artifact of technology and even a user interface. It's fascinating. I love that thing.
let's
Yeah.
get let's get over the fact that this isn't an announcement. Like, Valve has been doing this for so long. They never announce anything until it's announced. But then Gabe goes out and gives some talk somewhere where he just accidentally like leaks that they're building a console. Like, let's get over it. This is an announcement. Like, it's not the full blown announcement with like a order now button, but this is an announcement of something. And like with everything Valve, it's subject to change on a whim. So like, I'm just sort of over that. Like, but this isn't real. Like, we're hedging our bets, kind of thing. Like, that's just the way Valve is.
It would be interesting if you could pair it with a Quest and what do they call it? Airlink your games from the PC. Play PC games, Airlink to your Quest wirelessly.
Wait. I don't know what you mean by that.
Well, instead of doing like basically like what you would normally connect it to a PC at your desktop, and you play PC quality VR games wirelessly to your Quest, you're pairing it to your handheld device on the go, and you're playing PC quality VR games.
So you're
From
doing slight offloading of processing from a mobile processor, as opposed to
yeah.
doing it the SoC, the ARM Qualcomm processor on the headset, to a slightly more powerful but still portable x86 system for some type of VR game, or even like the flat screen, play it so you look like you have a giant monitor in headset.
I wonder how much more powerful, because like if you watch the review that I watched of this handheld device, this Ryzen 5 device, it's like pretty great. I mean, the graphics are I mean, you're right. It does require stereo, 90, potentially 72, 90 hertz. So maybe it wouldn't look as good, but it's an interesting question. Like, I wonder if eventually we will be able to offload the VR rendering to something portable that we can carry around with us to get a more high fidelity experience.
I'm smiling. I'm smiling not because the idea is bad, because the idea is great. It's just it would have 15-minute battery life. Like, it would have no time whatsoever.
Well, no, I think I disagree, because I think what this and using the Ryzen 5 chipset indicates is the bigger tech story of that we're now starting to see the benefits of these generational leaps in process manufacturing. Ryzen being highly efficient, much more efficient than some of the Intel counterparts, and Apple Apple's whole AR play is banking on them being able to manufacture a sub 5 nanometer process so that they can do all the graphical stuff needed of AR glasses with reasonable battery life. I think the M1 the M1 chipset on their laptop side and their Mac side is proof of that the old kind of battery life for performance trade-off is an idea that kind of it might go away.
This device, the Neo thing, it gets they claim 6 hours of battery life, but in practice it actually gets 2. But it gets 2 maxed out playing Crysis.
That's crazy, right? You wouldn't think of a gaming laptop like the whole thing. We used to think about gaming laptops were 15 minutes. We're emergency, like the batteries were really the UPS boxes of these things when you lose AC power supply. But yeah, very curious. I'm sure they're looking at the roadmap for processors and the supply chain, but I think shortages in silicon is going to factor into this.
Yeah.
And everyone's feeling the effects of that, from Apple to Tesla to maybe even Valve. Let's move on to, I think we have time for one more top story, but it's going to be a good one. Count it, we are now 2 weeks away from the debut of the next Marvel Studios TV show on Disney Plus. It is Loki. So Loki Watch coming June 6th, the 9th, I believe. June 9th is the debut. It's Wednesday, so reminded for that. And so maybe we'll have a chance to recap those shows on the show here. But we also saw the first extended teaser trailer, more than just a glimpse, but 60 seconds of footage from Chloe Zhao's The Eternal. It's just Eternals. Do you guys watch this trailer?
It's a 2-minute trailer.
Is it 2 minutes? It felt like 60 seconds. It went by so quickly because I was so engrossed into it. Kishore, as someone who knows the characters, what did you think?
I thought it looked pretty fantastic. There's a whole new set of characters, and the opening is very evocative of 2001 with like the monolith on Earth, and I think we get a little bit of those. Get a little bit of those vibes that the Eternals have been with us on Earth for a number of years, but they haven't been interacting with us in ways that overtly steer us, but they've been supporting us from sort of behind the scenes. We get very minor hints at all of them, like fleeting glimpses at them. I have to say, like, I really was skeptical of this because the Eternals are weird. They're just like a weird bunch of creatures. Like, if you're like, hey, mutants and X-Men, those are weird characters. These people are weirder than that. And so there's like a Game of Thrones meets X-Men vibe to these characters. And so I was really curious how they're going to visually pull that off. But I thought all of the characters looked good. Gemma Chan looked really believable. Selma Hayek looked great. Angelina Jolie looked great. I still think Kumail looks a little weird as in his buffed out form, but I think the one that I'm very interested in is the character Droog, who we saw like a brief glimpse of, who I would imagine is going to be one of the key pivots of this story. And so I'd like to see more of his character. We just saw him like literally walking out a barn door, so we have nothing from there. Visually spectacular, and it's starting to tell a story. I want to see a second trailer because we're missing some key elements. But we did get some solid Game of Thrones vibes here.
I mean, there are two main actors who are in Game of Thrones, and it's shot, looks like, off the coast of Ireland. So there's definitely that Game of Thrones part of it. Jeremy, as someone who is familiar with the MCU, this is a trailer that did not have overt MCU tie-ins until like the post-trailer stinger, almost, with a little bit of dialogue. Like, if you saw this in a movie theater or on TV at home, it's something that I think intentionally, it's not, if you did not know about it, you would be surprised that it was an MCU movie. Is that how you felt?
Yes, and in fact, I was so surprised that I assumed it was a TV show because I didn't think it was a big enough deal to be made into a movie, because it's not a superhero franchise I've ever heard of. And watching the trailer, I'm surprised there isn't any crossover at all with Thor or anybody from the Avengers to bring people like me into the theaters.
There's the mention.
It looks like it takes itself very seriously.
Yeah, and we don't know if this is supposed to be a big franchise, if this is a one-off that kind of kickstarts. I mean, the heavyweights that they've casted here. It's not easy to get Angelina Jolie, Salma Hayek, and all these big actors to do these movies. I doubt that Angelina Jolie has signed in for multiple films here to be part of the MCU. So maybe it's just kind of like a resetting, a big catalyst event that then lays the seeds for other MCU things as we're in this new phase. That little mention at the end, the idea of, who's going to lead the Avengers now that Captain Rogers is gone and Iron Man is gone. That's the tie-in that shows that they're aware of it. And I think in the background of one of those scenes, the same character who seems like a big, like the fan of the superheroes, you see the original Captain America shield on that airplane scene in the back too, as people have spotted out. It's funny that Jeremy, you said this looks like TV, because the whole dynamic of this family of these Eternals, it really feels like Marvel was this is what they wanted to do with that movie, The Inhumans, which they did turn into a TV show. The Inhumans, another kind of superpower ethereal family that live on the moon and have this royal aspect to them. But that was a TV show that they did alongside Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and it just bombed terribly. And so I think that tarred that franchise, and they kind of shifted gears and took the same idea and then grafted that theme to these characters. There's a lot of Jack Kirby-esque, that the costuming, very Jack Kirby-esque. We saw elements of that in Thor Ragnarok, and the color scheme and those big circles. And I definitely got Arrival vibes to this in the opening. And I'm very curious again. Like, I think the question of how it intersects with the Marvel that we know is going to be what drives people to seats, right? In addition to it being big movie stars and the best director of last year in Chloe Zhao.
I think this is going to be an origin story primarily, and then the second half of the movie will probably play out in its connection to some sort of crisis that's forced them to re-engage human society in some way, and that's where it's going to reconnect to the MCU. My sort of deep dive, like Marvel conspiracy rabbit hole, Norm, Atlantis involved or not?
Ooh, the Hidden Kingdoms. Yeah, there's so much that's like hidden on Earth that seems like they're gonna retcon and have them bring out. I mean, mutants could be absolutely something that comes out of this. We have
as a consequence, but not as central.
Exactly. Yeah. Retconning the origin of whatever happens from this is what spawns the mutant age or something. I could see that, or setting up the next big bad. Right, we have no idea what the next big bad is, and if it's going to be Galactus or some type of great cosmic event. These are cosmic characters, and also Secret Invasion too. There's so much intertwining stuff. Marvel's been around for 11 years now, 12 years now, and there's a lot more story. The Marvel Studios, I mean. There's that book, the Coffee Table book, if you guys don't know, that's coming out in September, the first 10 years of Marvel, the making of Marvel Studios, and very highly anticipating that book.
I'll just close by saying I hope they let Chloe Zhao go full Chloe Zhao and get those like very austere, ranging kind of environmental shots. We got one of that at the end where all like 10 of them or how many ever they are together on a cliff. But she's really, really good at those like outdoor environmental shots. And I hope we get a lot of those.
And, like shitting in a bucket, right? You're gonna have Black Knight taking a dump in a bucket, just like yeah, I don't know if you've seen Nomadland yet, but that's a thing that happens. Yeah, it's a depressing movie.
Jeremy, this might be the worst MCU film for you, because you'll be like, "What the hell is this?" Is what I expect.
Well, that'll be first.
It'll be it's a very strange story.
Okay.
And
I'm glad they're taking risks.
Yeah, and if you don't like it, there's going to be a new Spider-Man film. There's going to be Shang-Chi. There's plenty of MCU to go around. For every Avengers Endgame, there's a Thor Ragnarok and there's an Ant-Man and the Wasp. So, can't have them all be hits, but plenty of TV shows also. That does it for this week's show. Thank you all for listening. Any shout outs, any things you guys want to call out before we wrap up?
My hockey team for sweeping the Edmonton Oilers. An Oilers fan got into the tested YouTube comments last week and tried to haze me, and that did not turn out so well for you. I'm just joking. I'm having fun watching a lot of hockey, but mostly excited about Loki and taking a vacation coming up in a couple weeks. So I'll be off the podcast in 2 weeks.
Some kind of normalcy. If you want your mix of science and hockey playoffs, you can follow Kishore at Science Quiche on Twitter. If you want retro gaming and VR at Jareware. Yeah, sounds about right. And your latest projects.
I have no brand. That's why I don't have like a ton of followers. I have nothing concrete. I'm not like a Deep and Narrow. I'm a broad.
Let me tell you, you can just go on Reddit and repost whatever's on top of like some random subreddit on Twitter, and and leverage some retweets. I'll tell you, getting 100,000 likes on a tweet. You want to know how many new followers that nets you? As of right now,
because you posted what you posted a photo of some basketball players.
Yeah, from 1999, playing StarCraft on an airplane after winning the World Championships on a LAN. It was amazing.
100,000 likes. How many new followers?
14. That's I guess internet fame will get you.
You found your audience already. You've done it. Well done. They're all following you already.
Yes, you get no special prize for that. That's the scale of the internet these days. Okay, this week's outro is another vintage one from Great Job. Thank you again for listening, and we will see you next week.
Hi there, I didn't see you. Tested.
What is your real world speed test give you?
900.
That's not bad.
So it's like the normal 10%.
What do you got on Sonic?
980.
Yeah.
980. All right.
Yeah.
980 up.
That's the winner.
That's the most gangster I've ever heard you, Norm.
Praise be that gigabit.